Meet this young boy who loved to tinker with engines. No one would have guessed that he would grow up to make some of the world's most expensive cars. What's even more incredible is that he came from a family with very little money and hardly any education. So, how did he manage to do it? Let me introduce you to Frederick Henry Roy, born in 1863 in a place called Wilton in England. He was the youngest of 5 children. His parents, James and Mary, ran a flour mill. Unfortunately, his dad, James, didn't have the knack for business, and the mill didn't bring in much money. So, for a long time, the Royce family struggled to make ends meet. Things got so tough that in 1867, they had to declare bankruptcy. In search of a better life, they decided to move to London. Even though Henry was just a little 4-year-old boy, he started his first job on a farm, scaring away birds and earning just a few pennies each week. His father, James, found work at another flour mill, but the family was still buried in debt. Life was very hard for the Royce family, and then, just when they thought things couldn't get any worse, a tragedy occurred. When Henry was only 9 years old, his father passed away. This was not only heartbreaking, but it also made their financial struggles even more challenging. So, instead of going to school, Henry had to work full-time. He sold newspapers and delivered telegrams for the post office, earning just a few pennies for each delivery. As a young teenager, he began an apprenticeship with the Great Northern Railway Works. His aunt chipped in some money to help him, and even though he didn't have much of a formal education, Henry was determined to learn. In his free time, he pored over books on algebra, French, and electrical engineering. But after 3 years, he had to stop because he didn't have enough money. So he left his apprenticeship and worked briefly at a tool-making company in Leeds. Then he found a job at the Electric Light and Power Company in London. In 1882, he moved again, this time to Liverpool, still working for the Electric Light and Power Company. His real dream was to make engineering his full-time career. But at 22 years old, he and his engineer friend Ernest Claremont decided to start their own business. They called it F.H. Royce and Company. Back then, Henry had only 20 pounds to his name, and Ernest had just 50 pounds. They pooled their small savings and ventured into business together, starting with making electric fittings. They rented a place on 1A Cook Street in Manchester and lived in a single room above their shop. Money was tight and they could hardly afford to eat, so they made sandwiches every day. The odds of success for 2 young men like them were incredibly low. But instead of letting self-doubt get to them, Henry stuck to what he knew best: hard work. In everything he did, he made sure their product was better than what others offered. After a lot of trial and error, they finally created their first big hit, the electric doorbell. However, Henry's curiosity led him down a different path: motor cars. While Henry Royce played a crucial role in the Rolls-Royce tale, there's another person we shouldn't overlook, and that's Charles Stuart Rolls. It's where Royce and Rolls crossed paths that the brand's name was born. Born in 1877 in the posh Berkeley Square of London, Charles Rolls was the youngest child of Lord and Lady Languedoc. He had a deep love for engineering from a very young age and went on to study mechanical engineering at Trinity College in Cambridge. Charles had a knack for standing out. People knew him for messing around with engines, and he even earned the nickname Dirty Rolls. During his college days, he became the first student to have a car. He did something quite unusual for the time. He went all the way to Paris to buy a Peugeot Phaeton when cars were almost unheard of. After finishing his studies in 1898, Charles started working on a steam yacht and later at the London and Northwestern Railway. But he was more keen on cars, leading-edge ventures, and selling stuff. With the financial backing of his father, he opened one of the earliest car dealerships in Britain. In 1903, he named it C.S. Rolls and Company. And for a couple of years, he concentrated on bringing and selling Peugeot and Minerva cars. His business was thriving, and Charles used the money to fuel his sporting interests. Aside from being a passionate driver, pioneer, and racer, he was also a keen aviator. Regrettably, Charles's lifelong passion would end up costing him more than just money. While he was running his company, F.H. Royce & Company, Henry started showing an increasing interest in motor cars. In 1901, he decided to enhance a used two-cylinder DeCavalier car that he had purchased. However, he wanted to go further, so he made up his mind to construct a car from scratch. Henry had an unrelenting desire for perfection, and when he discovered design flaws in the DeCavalier, he made an aim to do it better. As 1903 came to a close, Henry had already designed and crafted his inaugural petrol engine. By the following year, he was proudly steering his first Royce 10-power motor car through the town streets. Nearly 2 decades had elapsed since Henry established his business. His debut car turned out to be a Triumph, prompting him to embark on the creation of another. Out of the 3 cars he had crafted, one was gifted to his business comrade, Ernest Claremont, and the other was sold to one of their shareholders, a certain Henry Edmunds. As fate would have it, Henry Edmunds played a pivotal role in arranging the fateful encounter between Rolls and Royce. Henry Edmunds was not just a shareholder in Royce's enterprise, he was also a close friend of Rolls. Having acquired one of Royce's automobiles, he couldn't stop raving about it to Rolls. At that time, Rolls was facing the frustration of being limited to selling imports in his own company. Edmunds recognized the opportunity and facilitated a meeting between Rolls and Royce. Little did Edmunds know that this meeting would reshape the future of the automotive world. While Royce typically favored 3- and 4-cylinder vehicles, Royce's 2-cylinder creation left an indelible mark on him. In mere moments of laying eyes on it, he knew he had found precisely what he'd been searching for. After taking the motor car for a spin, Rolls promptly agreed to sell as many of these motor cars as Royce could produce. These 2 gentlemen formed an extraordinary pair. Despite their significant age gap and differences in their educational backgrounds, they complemented each other perfectly. Royce, aged 41, was largely self-taught, having worked diligently to make ends meet. On the other hand, Rolls, at 26, had enjoyed a prestigious education at Trinity College and had spent his young adult years racing around in his luxurious cars. The question lingered, could they find common ground? Though Henry Royce and Charles Rolls were starkly different individuals, their partnership proved to be an exceptional one. Their resounding success in the realm of automobiles ultimately culminated in the birth of the Rolls-Royce Company in 1906. Soon after, the 6-cylinder Silver Ghost was introduced and quickly earned the reputation of being the finest automobile globally within a year. Truly remarkable. Nevertheless, the credit for this achievement was not theirs alone. Crafting a distinguished brand necessitates vision. While Henry and Charles were tirelessly crafting and peddling motor cars, Charles's associate Claude Johnson assumed the role of managing director. Recognizing the importance of enhancing the company's reputation, the publicity maestro orchestrated a series of stunts to showcase the quietness and dependability of Rolls-Royce motor cars. One of his early advertisements for the 40 to 50 horsepower motor car declared it as the 6-cylinder Rolls-Royce, not one of the best, but the best car in the world. This campaign proved incredibly effective, underscoring Rolls-Royce's superior performance and triggering a worldwide demand for their peerless engineering. Claude was so pivotal to the company's triumph that he came to be known as the hyphen in Rolls-Royce. Marketing is great, but it can only take you so far. Just like trying to use a banana as a phone, you might get some funny looks. Henry and Charles knew that, and they were all about delivering top-notch quality. Henry was a workaholic, never really stopping to have a proper meal. You could say he had a license for hard work, but not for a balanced diet. Surprisingly, despite his odd eating habits and unhealthy lifestyle, he outlived his buddy Charles for a couple of decades. Guess all that hard work kept him going. Now, Charles, the daredevil, had a thing for aviation. He even tried to drag Henry into his flying schemes, but Henry decided to keep his feet firmly on the ground. Charles went all out and bought himself a Wright Flyer aircraft, making over 200 flights with it. In 1910, he even pulled off a non-stop double flight across the English Channel. But just 1 month later, his flying career took a nosedive. During an air show in Bournemouth, Charles met an untimely end in a plane crash. He was just 32, becoming the first Brit to have a bit of a rough landing. This tragic event marked the end of the short-lived Rolls-Royce partnership. Now, Henry had to carry on the legacy all by himself. Henry was a true workhorse, and his innovative design solidified Rolls-Royce's reputation for top-notch engineering and quality. He never settled for anything less than perfection. In his own words, he'd say, "Strive for perfection in everything you do. Take the best that exists and make it better. When it does not exist, design it." He was a perfectionist, and it showed in his work. During World War I, the company expanded into something Charles once asked for: airplane engines. In the next couple of decades, Rolls-Royce did pretty darn well, but Henry's health was another story. In 1993, he gave in to digestive issues. Years of dodgy eating and overworking finally caught up with him. He spent his last years as a sort of half-invalid, but that didn't stop him from doing what he loved. He kept at it until the very end. In fact, his last doodle was drawn from his deathbed just a few hours before he passed away at the age of 70. Today, Rolls-Royce is still a big name in the engineering world. A Rolls-Royce car is like the caviar of automobiles. It's one of the fanciest and most expensive rides you can buy. Currently, BMW is calling the shots, but Rolls-Royce is still famous for creating some of the priciest cars in the world. But it's the vision of Sir Henry Royce and Sir Charles Rolls that really puts the Rolls-Royce name on the map. A symbol of pure and unadulterated wealth, like owning a golden pet unicorn. So there you have it. If you liked the video, please subscribe to the channel for more updates. Until next time.